His blood was still on my hands when I realized this was just the beginning of a deep sadness, but one guided by many surprises. Good morning, my dear ones. My name is Jacqueline, but everyone here calls me Grandma Jackie. I'm 72 years old, and I'm here to tell a story I've kept buried deep in my soul for almost 4 decades. Born and raised in small-town Kentucky in a time when women had no voice or say. Today I live in Nashville, where I rebuilt my life after everything I'm about to tell you. Before I start this story I've never told anyone, I want to thank you all who found this channel. If you're enjoying it, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming stories from this old lady. Tell me in the comments what part of America you're watching from. I love imagining all the different corners this video will reach, and that warms my heart. I was born in 1951 in a small farmhouse in rural Kentucky. My father, Sebastian, worked the land, growing corn, beans, tobacco. My mother, Ruby, took in laundry for the town folks and made quilts that she sold at the farmer's market. We were poor, but we never lacked food on the table or love in that house. I was raised with 5 siblings, 3 boys, 3 girls. I was the second oldest. From early on, I learned to care for the younger ones, to cook, to clean. School? Only through 4th grade. After that, my father said, "Women don't need much book learning, just enough so they don't get cheated at the store," different from my brothers, who studied as far as they wanted. The smell of my childhood was beans cooking, wet earth after rain, and smoke from the wood stove. We woke to the rooster's crow, slept when the oil lamp went out. No electricity, no running water. Water came from the well. Baths were in a tin tub. Simple life, but I didn't know any other. I got my first period at 12 and my mother said, "Now you're a young lady, you have to be careful around men." She didn't explain anything else. I thought I was going to die bleeding. I was so scared. The explanations came from older friends, in whispers, full of shame and incomplete words. My father was strict, but never violent. He had that serious way of men from that era who thought showing affection was for weak people. But I knew he loved us, in his crooked way. My mother was more affectionate, hugged us, sang, told stories at night. Things started changing when I turned 16. Suddenly, the young men started looking at me differently at the market, at church, at the county fair. I was thin, brown-haired, hair down to my waist. Nothing special, but in that small town, any young woman caught attention. It was at the 1967 county fair that I met John. He was from the next town over, had come with friends for the festivities. Tall, strong, worked construction. He was 22 and had a smile that made me forget my own name. "Would the young lady like to dance?" he asked, extending his hand while the bluegrass band played. I looked at my father, who nodded discreetly. In those days, proper girls didn't go anywhere alone. Hay bales, fiddle music, the smell of corn dogs and cotton candy. I danced with John until sweat ran down, until my feet hurt. When he brought me back to my family, I knew something had changed inside me. "Can I come visit you this Sunday?" he asked before leaving. That Sunday, John showed up at our house dressed in his best clothes, hair combed, a box of chocolates for my mother. He talked with my father about work, about baseball, about life. He charmed my younger siblings with jokes and little games. Mama served coffee, and he praised it like it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. The courtship began like that, with Sunday visits, always supervised. John would sit in the parlor, me in the chair beside him. Respectful distance, formal conversation. Sometimes he brought a simple gift, a hair ribbon, fruit we didn't have around there, a little notebook for me to write in. "Jacqueline, this young man seems decent," my father commented after a few months. "But take it slow. Men promise a lot before they get what they want. Then they change." I should have listened to my father more carefully. In the first 6 months, John was attentive, patient, respectful. He talked about his dreams, wanted to be a foreman someday, have his own house, start a family. He told me about his father, Dale, widowed for many years, a respected man in their community, owner of a small general store. "My father raised 3 boys alone," John told me with pride. "Never wanted to marry again. Said no woman could replace my mother." I thought this respect for his mother's memory was beautiful. Little did I know what this story was hiding. I met Dale the day John took me to meet his family. It was Sunday. I had made a cornbread to please them. Dale was an imposing man, taller than John, graying hair, big, calloused hands. He had that penetrating gaze that seemed to see right through people. "So this is the girl who's been occupying my son's mind?" he said, looking me up and down. I felt a shiver. It wasn't the look of a father-in-law meeting his daughter-in-law. It was the look of a man evaluating merchandise. I lowered my eyes, as they had taught me proper girls should do. Now I know I should have trusted my instinct and run from there. The visit was strange. Dale asked many questions: if I knew how to cook, clean, sew, if I was a respectable girl, if I planned to have many children. John looked embarrassed, but didn't challenge his father. His brothers seemed used to this behavior, almost bored. "Dad, she's a good girl," John tried to intervene at one point. "Comes from a decent family." "I'm just getting to know who's going to enter the family," Dale replied coldly. "A woman has to know her place from the beginning." I went home uneasy, but didn't say anything to my parents. I thought it was just the way of an older man, that old-fashioned upbringing. How foolish I was. The courtship continued, and John asked for my hand a year later. I was 17 when we got engaged. He was 23. The engagement was simple, a small party at my house, with cake made by my mother, soda shared in many glasses, all the neighbors present. My parents gave their small savings to help with the trousseau. John had already managed to rent a little house in town. Small, just 2 rooms, but it was the beginning of our dream. I married in January 1969, had just turned 18. Simple white dress that my mother and aunts sewed, borrowed veil from a cousin, bouquet of wildflowers picked the morning of the wedding. The ceremony was at the town's little church, small but packed. In small towns, weddings are events for everyone. Dale showed up with his other 2 sons. During the entire ceremony, I felt his gaze on me, as if he were evaluating whether I was worthy of his son. There was no smile, no gesture of approval. Just that cold, calculating look. At the reception after the ceremony, he drank more than everyone else. He didn't get falling down drunk, but that kind of talkative drunk who says what he really thinks. At one point, he approached John and me. "Now you have responsibility, boy," he said, gripping his son's shoulder tightly. "A woman is like an animal, needs a tight rein from the start, or she'll take over." John laughed awkwardly. I pretended not to hear, as women of that era were trained to do. I swallowed those words along with the wedding cake. The wedding night was like many of that era, frightening, painful, full of ignorance on both sides. John wasn't intentionally cruel, but he also didn't know what to do beyond what he heard from other men. I knew nothing beyond the "lie down and endure it" that older women whispered to brides. I woke up the next day as a wife, a married woman, a housewife. The life ahead seemed mapped out. Take care of the house, the husband, have children, repeat the cycle I saw in all the women around me. The first months were about adaptation. John worked Monday through Saturday, left before sunrise, came back when it was already dark. I took care of the house, made food, washed clothes. Sometimes I did embroidery to sell and help with income. But John didn't like it much, said it seemed like he couldn't support the household. Once a month, we visited Dale. Those visits were always tense for me. He examined his son's house with a critical eye, ran his finger over furniture looking for dust, looked at the pots to see if they were well scrubbed. "You can tell a woman by the kitchen she keeps," he'd say, as if I weren't present. When John wasn't around, Dale made comments that left me uncomfortable. "A good wife would have already given me a grandson to hold," or, "You're too thin like that, men like some meat to grab." I swallowed everything quietly. He was my husband's father, deserved respect. That's what they had taught me. Besides, I was afraid of him. Afraid of that look, those big hands, that authority he imposed. Things started getting strange when I got pregnant at the end of 1969. John was radiant, treated me like I was made of crystal. Dale, when he found out, came to visit, something he never did, always waited for us to go to him. "Now you're finally a complete woman," he said, looking at my still flat belly. "I hope it's a boy. There are already too many women in this world." The pregnancy was difficult. Constant nausea, weakness, pains that came and went. The town doctor said it was normal, that I was very young and my body was adapting. John worried but needed to work. I spent most of those months alone, dealing with the discomfort as I could. Dale started showing up more. He brought things for the baby. A wooden crib he made himself, little clothes he had saved from his sons, a rocking horse in case it was a boy. Always when John wasn't there. Always with that look that bothered me. "A pregnant girl needs care," he said. "My son works too much, can't always be here." On one of those visits, in the 5th month of pregnancy, he brought a bottle of homemade wine. "For strength," he insisted when I refused. "Pregnant women need strong blood." I accepted a small glass so as not to seem ungrateful. The taste was strange, too strong. 2 hours later, I started feeling intense pains, bleeding. Dale had already left. I screamed for help until a neighbor heard. I lost the baby that night. The doctor said it happens, that many women lose their first. Nobody questioned the wine, not even me at the time. Only years later, remembering, did the pieces fit together. John was devastated, but recovered quickly, the way men do. "We'll try again," he said. "God knows what he's doing." Dale came to the baby's funeral with a solemn expression, but his eyes showed no sadness. There was almost relief. It was after that I noticed the change in John. It started slowly, small complaints, criticisms of the food seasoning, of how the house was arranged. He started drinking more, coming home later. At first it was comments, then came the shouting. The first slap came when I asked where he had spent the night. Hard, across the face, throwing me against the wall. "My woman doesn't question me," he said through gritted teeth. "Learn your place." I cried all night in the bathroom, with a cloth in my mouth so he wouldn't hear. In the morning, John acted as if nothing had happened. I also pretended, like so many women before me. That slap opened the door for others. Soon came pushes, then punches. Always when he drank too much, always followed by repentance the next morning. Flowers picked on the way home, promises of never again, rare masculine tears that convinced me he really felt sorry, and I forgave. Because that's what women did. Because I had nowhere to go. My parents had died in a car accident 6 months after my wedding. Because I believed that love was like that, with good and bad parts. Dale knew, I'm sure he knew. During visits, he looked at my bruises, poorly disguised with long clothes, even in the heat, with the thick face powder I used to cover the marks. "A woman has to know how to please her husband," he commented, smiling sideways. "When she doesn't please, she gets corrected." In 1972, I got pregnant again. This time, John reduced his drinking, the aggressions stopped temporarily. Dale kept his distance during those months, which brought me relief. The pregnancy was calmer than the first, and in October of that year, our daughter Mariana was born. Beautiful, perfect, with her father's eyes and my dark hair. John was disappointed it wasn't a boy, but soon was enchanted by his daughter. Dale didn't even want to hold his granddaughter when we took her to meet him. "Girls are just trouble," he said, barely looking at the baby. "Another mouth to feed that brings no return." With Mariana, I found new strength. I no longer allowed John to hit me in front of her, even when she was just a baby. He respected that, took his explosions to another room, but they continued happening. Our life went on like this for 2 more years. John working, drinking, alternating between loving husband and aggressor. Me taking care of the house, the daughter, trying to be invisible when I felt the storm coming. Dale visiting us monthly, always with those looks, those comments, that way that made me want to lock all the doors. It was in 1974 that everything changed forever. John had just turned 29, I was 23, Mariana was almost 2. It was a Friday, like any other. John left for work in the morning, promising to come home early to take Mariana to see the fireworks at the town festival. The day passed, night fell, no John. It wasn't uncommon. Many times he went from work straight to the bar. But he had promised his daughter, who waited anxiously, dressed in her party dress. When the clock struck 9 at night, I put Mariana to bed, promising that Daddy would take her to see fireworks the next day. She fell asleep crying. At midnight, there was a knock at the door. It was John's friend, Tom. Pale face, trembling hands. "Jacqueline," Something happened. There was an accident at the construction site. Tom's words seemed to come from far away, as if he were speaking underwater. Scaffolding broke. John fell from the 3rd floor. My world collapsed in that instant. I don't remember exactly how I got to the hospital. I know a neighbor stayed with Mariana. I know I cried the whole way in Tom's truck, praying every prayer I knew. But when I got there, John was already gone. Had no chance, the doctor said. Instant death. He didn't suffer. As if that were consolation for a 23-year-old widow with a small daughter. I looked at that body covered with a white sheet and didn't recognize the man I had shared 5 years of my life with. His face was different, deformed by the fall, but the hands were the same, hands that caressed me and also hurt me so many times. I cried for everything, for the John I met at the county fair, for the loving father he sometimes managed to be, even for the aggressor who repented in the morning. I cried for the future we wouldn't have, for the promises he made on good days, that everything would get better. In the days that followed, I lived in a state of shock. The funeral was quick. We didn't have money for anything elaborate. Dale organized everything, paid the expenses. He seemed too controlled, as if he were burying a stranger, not his own son. Life goes on, he said at the cemetery, while the coffin was lowered into the earth. You and the girl can count on me. At that moment, his words seemed kind. A safe harbor when I was drowning. Little did I know what that offer really meant. I went back home with Mariana, to the deafening silence, to the corners that still held John's smell, to his clothes on the line that I had washed the day before. Life had been hard beside him, but at least I wasn't alone. Now it was just me and my daughter in the world. I had no job, no money saved. John never allowed me to work outside, and the little I earned with embroidery barely paid for material to make more. The rent was due in a week, and the landlord had already come to give his condolences and remind me that business is business. That's when Dale showed up with a proposal. Come live with me, he said, sitting in my living room 3 days after the funeral. The house is big, has a spare room since the boys left. Mariana will have better conditions than in this place. I hesitated. Something about the offer caused me discomfort, the same shiver I felt when I met him. But what else could I do? Go back to Kentucky? I had no family there anymore, no close friends after being away for so long. It would just be until I can get a job, get established. Of course, he replied too quickly. Just until you recover from this blow. A week later, Mariana and I moved to Dale's house. It was on a small farm outside town, isolated, surrounded by cornfields. The house was simple but spacious, 3 bedrooms, large living room, kitchen with wood stove, big yard with chickens and a milk cow. The general store he managed was in the front part of the property, facing the main road. The first days were calm. Dale left early for the store, came back for lunch that I prepared, then returned to work until nightfall. He was polite, kept respectful distance. He spent little time with his granddaughter, but didn't show the aversion of the first meetings. I kept the house in order, cooked, washed, ironed. Mariana played in the yard, enchanted with the animals, with the space she had never had before. Gradually, the pain of loss gave way to routine, to the need to move forward. I started looking for work. I asked the store customers, offered sewing and embroidery services. It was little, but I started saving some money hidden in a cookie tin, saving for our new beginning. Changes in Dale started in the first month. Subtle at first. A lingering look during dinner, a strange compliment about how the dress marked my body. Questions about when was the last time John and I had slept together. A young woman like you must miss it, he commented one night after Mariana was already asleep. I pretended not to understand, thanked him for dinner, and went to my room, locking the door as I had already made a habit. The uneasiness grew, but I repeated to myself that it was all in my head, that I was misinterpreting because of grief, fear of being alone. The first time he tried something more direct was when we completed 2 months in that house. Mariana had a fever. I had spent the night awake with her. In the morning, Dale offered to get medicine in town. Lie down a bit, he said when he returned. I'll watch the girl while you rest. Exhausted, I accepted. I fell asleep almost instantly in my room. I woke up with the mattress sinking beside me, a weight on top of me. Dale, shirtless, his breath of morning whiskey invading my face. "Quiet," he whispered, one hand covering my mouth. "Don't want to wake the girl." I fought. With all the strength I had, I struggled, bit, scratched. For an instant, surprise gave me the advantage. I managed to push him, run to Mariana's room, lock the door. He didn't insist that day. He stayed on the other side of the door, heavy breathing. "It was just a misunderstanding," he finally said. "No need to make such a drama." I spent the afternoon locked up with Mariana, terrified. When he left for the store, I took the chance to get water, food, what we needed to spend the night entrenched in the room. At night, he knocked on the door. Calm voice, as if nothing had happened. "Jacqueline, don't be silly. Let's talk like adults. It was an impulse, it won't happen again." I didn't answer. Mariana slept in my arms, her fever finally breaking. I prayed for dawn to come soon, for a chance to escape from there. At dawn, the door opened. I had forgotten he kept copies of all the keys. I woke up with him already inside the room, approaching the bed where Mariana and I slept. "If you scream, if you make any noise, you'll scare the girl," he warned, his voice strangely controlled. "Come with me to the other room. Let's resolve this like grown-ups." I looked at my sleeping daughter. The fear of waking her, of traumatizing her, was greater than my own terror. I got up silently and followed him to his room. What happened that night, I don't have the courage to detail even after so many decades. I'll just say it was the beginning of a nightmare that would last weeks, that I went back to my daughter's side, feeling I would never be the same again. That part of me had died in that room. In the morning, Dale acted as if nothing had happened. Had coffee, went to the store, came back for lunch. The only difference was the satisfied smile, the look of someone who had proven he could do whatever he wanted. "This will be our secret," he said when we were alone. "Nobody would believe you anyway. The daughter-in-law who came to live with her father-in-law and now accuses him? Everyone will think it's a scheme to stay with the house, with the property." And he was right. Who would believe, young widow without resources, against an established man respected in the community, even if they believed what would become of me and Mariana? Where would we go? I started barricading the bedroom door with chairs, tables, everything I could find. But he always found a way. Always had the perfect excuse for Mariana, for the neighbors, for anyone who asked about the nighttime noises, about my swollen eyes from crying so much. "Mommy is sad because she misses Daddy," he told Mariana when she asked why I cried so much. I tried to escape twice. The first time, he found me on the road, Mariana in my arms, our small bundle of clothes on my back. He brought me back by force, the girl crying without understanding. "Try again, and the girl stays with me," he threatened when we were alone. "I can get custody. I have friends, money for a lawyer. You have nothing." The second time, I managed to get to the bus stop. I was getting on the bus to Nashville when he showed up with the town sheriff. "This is my daughter-in-law," he explained to the man. "She hasn't been right in the head since my son died. She's trying to take my granddaughter away, poor little thing." The sheriff, Dale's buddy for years, looked at me with pity. "Better go back home, ma'am. Children need stability." That's when I understood there was no way out, that nobody would help me, that the nightmare would only end when he wanted it to. In the third week of that hell, Dale drank more whiskey than usual. The harvest had been good. The store was prospering. He celebrated alone while I put Mariana to bed. When he entered my room that night, he was more violent than normal. He wasn't satisfied with the usual abuse. He wanted to hurt, humiliate, leave marks. He hit hard when I tried to resist, threw me against the wall, dragged me by my hair. "Just like John's mother," he murmured while he assaulted me. She also played hard to get in the beginning. The revelation shocked me even amid the pain. John's mother, whom he said he respected so much, whom he said was irreplaceable, had she gone through the same hell? For the first time, I couldn't contain my screams. The pain was too intense, the desperation too immense. Mariana woke up, came to the door calling, "Mommy? Is Mommy hurt? Go away, girl," Dale shouted. "Go back to your room." I heard her little steps running, scared. That awakened something in me. a fury I didn't know existed. My daughter wouldn't grow up seeing her mother being destroyed like this, wouldn't live thinking this was normal. In the impulse of rage, I managed to break free. I ran to the kitchen, Dale right behind, stumbling in his own drunkenness. I grabbed the first thing I found, an iron skillet still hot from dinner. When he reached me, swaying, smiling that horrible smile, I spun with all my strength. The skillet hit the side of his head with a sound I'll never forget. Dale fell, first to his knees, then on his side. He didn't move anymore. I stood there, the skillet still in my hand, watching the blood that started spreading across the cement floor. I felt nothing. No remorse, no relief, no fear. Just emptiness. Mariana appeared at the kitchen door, wide eyes. Is Grandpa hurt too? I dropped the skillet, ran to her, covered her eyes. Grandpa fell asleep, my love. Let's go to your room. Mommy is going to pack our things and we're going to travel. I put her in bed, talking about the adventure we would have, about the big city we would see. While she fell asleep again, my mind was racing. What to do now? I went back to the kitchen. Dale remained motionless, the blood forming an ever larger pool. I checked his pulse. Nothing. His neck. No sign of life. I had killed my father-in-law. The man who abused me for weeks. The man who, I now realized, had probably done the same to John's mother years ago. The man who was respected by everyone, whom nobody ever questioned. I couldn't call the police. Who would believe my version? A widow who kills the father-in-law who gave her shelter. They would arrest me, maybe forever. What would become of Mariana? That's when I made the decision that would change our lives forever. I dragged Dale's body to the yard, to the pig pen where he raised 2 large pigs. Big, hungry animals that he fed with scraps. I'm sorry, I murmured. Not to him, but to some greater force that might hear me. There was no other way. I threw the body over the improvised fence. The pigs approached, curious at first. Then, I looked away, but didn't move. I needed to be sure. I went back inside, washed the kitchen like I had never washed before. I scrubbed the floor, the walls, everything that could have a drop of blood. I burned my stained clothes, bathed until my skin burned. I packed a small suitcase with our most important things. I took the money I found in the house, not much, but enough to start over somewhere else. I woke Mariana when the first ray of sun appeared. We're going to travel now, my love. We're going to see new places. And Grandpa? Grandpa stayed to take care of the house. We'll send a letter later. We went to the road, waited for the first bus. Nashville was the most logical destination. Big city, where nobody would know us, where we could disappear. While the bus moved away from that place, I looked through the window one last time. The house got smaller in the distance, the store, the yard where I left buried not only my father-in-law's body, but also part of my soul. Mariana slept in my lap during the trip, innocent, not understanding what we had left behind. I stayed awake, eyes open, but not seeing the landscape that passed. I could only see the blood, Dale's glassy eyes, the skillet in my hand. What I had done haunted me, but I didn't regret it. I had protected my daughter. I had survived. And now, for the first time since John's death, I had control of my life again. The bus continued to Nashville, and I continued toward an uncertain future. But at least it would be a future I would choose myself. I carried with me the weight of what I had done, but also the determination to never be a victim again. What I didn't know was that Nashville held its own challenges, that the journey to rebuild my life was just beginning, and that Dale's ghost would follow me much longer than I imagined. We arrived in Nashville on a humid late afternoon in 1974. The bus station was bustling with people, noise, strange smells for someone coming from a small town. Mariana clinging to my neck, scared by all the commotion. Me, with our small suitcase, less than $100 in my pocket, and my heart heavy with what I had left behind. "Where are we going to sleep, Mommy?" Mariana asked, her tired little eyes from the 6-hour journey. Good question. I didn't know anyone in the city, hadn't planned anything beyond the escape. In my mind, the important thing was to get out of that hell. The rest would work out. A lady who traveled beside us on the bus, Mrs. Dolores, graying hair and kind face, must have noticed my desperation. "Do you have somewhere to stay, dear?" I shook my head, holding back tears. I was exhausted, terrified, without direction. "I know a cheap boarding house downtown. It's not luxury, but it's clean. The owner is good people, might give a discount for someone arriving with a child." We followed Mrs. Dolores on a crowded city bus, then through steep hills of downtown. Nashville scared and amazed me at the same time. Tall buildings, some majestic, others falling apart. Music coming from everywhere, people on sidewalks, at windows, on corners. So different from the quiet small town I knew. The boarding house was in an old building, peeling walls, wooden stairs that creaked with each step. Mrs. Zelda, the owner, had a face marked by time and a look that seemed to see beyond appearances. "Running from your husband, child?" she asked when we were alone. "From my father-in-law," I replied before thinking, immediately regretting the confession. She nodded without asking for details. "Very common. More than people imagine or want to admit." The room was tiny. A single bed, a mattress on the floor, a wardrobe that didn't close properly. But it had a window that caught the breeze from the Cumberland River and was clean. For someone carrying the weight I carried, it seemed like a palace. The first days were about adaptation. Nashville was a world apart. The constant heat, the humidity, the accelerated pace, the different language that sometimes I barely understood. Mariana adapted faster, fascinated with the colors, sounds, movement. Mrs. Zelda helped me find work at a sewing factory downtown. Paid little, but at least it was legitimate employment. I got up at 5 in the morning, left Mariana with Mrs. Zelda herself, who charged a pittance to watch her, and took 2 buses to the factory. The work was exhausting. 10, sometimes 12 hours bent over the sewing machine, always doing the same movements, hearing the deafening noise of machines, breathing fabric dust that covered everything. I came back at night, body aching, fingers pricked by needles, eyes burning. Mariana was already asleep when I arrived. On weekends, I tried to compensate, taking her to walk in the park, to the riverfront, to places that cost nothing beyond bus fare. "You're very reserved, ma'am," Mrs. Zelda commented one Sunday while watching me braid Mariana's hair. "Never talk about the past, about family." "I have no family," I replied simply. "Just me and her." Life continued in a precarious routine, but at least we were safe. Or so I thought, until the 3rd month in Nashville. It was on a hot Sunday in October. We were coming back from the park, Mariana hopping ahead of me, when I saw the newspaper at the newsstand. I didn't usually buy one. Every cent was counted, but the headline paralyzed me. "Store owner missing, police suspect murder." Dale's photo, serious, looking straight at the camera, occupied half the page. I grabbed the newspaper with trembling hands, ignoring the vendor complaining that newspapers aren't magazines to read for free. The story said the community was shocked by the disappearance of the respected businessman, that police were investigating murder suspicion after bloodstains were found in the kitchen. And worse, it talked about the mysterious flight of the daughter-in-law and granddaughter right after the disappearance. "Police are looking for Jacqueline Ferreira Santos for questioning," said the last paragraph. I let the newspaper fall, picked up Mariana, and ran back to the boarding house. My heart beating so hard I thought it would explode. "I need to leave here," I told Mrs. Zelda as soon as I entered. "Today. Now. What happened, child? You look like you saw a ghost." I couldn't tell. Even to that lady who had been so good, I couldn't reveal what I had done. "My father-in-law, he found me. He's going to take me back." It wasn't a complete lie. If they found me, I would be taken back. Just to jail, not to his house. Mrs. Zelda didn't ask more questions. She helped pack our small suitcase, gave a little extra money beyond what she owed for watching Mariana. "Where are you going now?" "I don't know. Another state, maybe. Without new documents, they'll find you wherever you go. I know someone who can help, but it costs." Almost all the money I had saved in 3 months went to pay the someone Mrs. Zelda knew. A hunched man, smelling of cigarettes and moonshine, who appeared at the boarding house in the dead of night with falsified documents. "Now you're Mary Louise Silva," he said, handing over the birth certificate and brand new identity card. And the girl is Anna Lucy. Guard the names well. Never answer to the old ones again, not even when you're alone. I quit the factory job the next day, lost the severance pay, but couldn't risk it. We left downtown, Mrs. Zelda's kindness, the life I had barely started building. We went to the other side of the city, to a neighborhood near the airport, where we rented a small room in the back of a family's house. The following months were of constant paranoia. Every police car, every man who looked too long, every question about my past made me freeze with fear. I slept poorly, ate little, lost so much weight that my ribs showed. I found work as a housekeeper for a family in Belle Meade. They paid less than the factory, but I could bring Mariana with me. The employer, Mrs. Elizabeth, was a demanding but fair woman. Her husband, Dr. Richard, a renowned doctor, barely appeared at home. At home? What home? We no longer had a real home. The rented room was just a place to sleep. We spent our days at Mrs. Elizabeth's house, me cleaning, cooking, washing, while Mariana played in the backyard. We came back late, fell exhausted into the bed we shared, to wake before sunrise and start all over again. It went on like this for almost a year, the fear gradually diminishing, giving way to physical exhaustion, emotional emptiness. I had escaped hell with Dale. But what kind of life was this that I was offering my daughter? Mariana turned 4 in May 1975. I had no money for a present, for a party. I bought a cupcake at the bakery, put an improvised candle in it. We sang Happy Birthday, just the two of us, in the stuffy little room. "I wanted a doll, Mommy," she asked with those eyes that reminded me so much of John's. "Next birthday, daughter. Mommy promises." Life continued at this pace for a few more months, until in September, what I most feared happened. I was at the grocery store with Mariana, buying the little Our Money Allowed, when I saw the poster taped to the bulletin board. My face, a hand-drawn sketch, but recognizable. Wanted for murder, in bold letters, and a reward for information. The floor seemed to disappear under my feet. The package of beans I was holding fell, spilling grains across the cement floor. "Miss, are you feeling sick?" asked the store owner, approaching. I didn't answer. I picked up Mariana and got out of there as fast as I could, without looking back. I didn't go back to the room, nor to Mrs. Elizabeth's house. I walked aimlessly through the city, Mariana complaining of tiredness, of hunger, not understanding what was happening. "We're playing hide-and-seek, daughter," I explained, swallowing my desperation. "We can't let anyone find us." By the end of the day, when I couldn't walk anymore, we ended up in a park downtown. Mariana slept in my lap, exhausted. I stayed there, watching the boats on the Cumberland River, thinking I could board one of them, flee far away, start over. But how? Without money, without documents I could show without fear, with a small child. Where would I go? How long until they found me again? That's when I made a decision as painful as it was necessary. I couldn't continue like this. I needed to face what I had done, assume the consequences. For Mariana's sake, who deserved more than a life of running and lies? The next morning, I washed our faces at a public fountain, fixed our clothes the best I could. I bought bread with the last money I had. "We're going to visit an important person," I told Mariana, who ate her piece of bread with the voracity of someone who hadn't had dinner the night before. We walked to the Central Police Station, each step heavier than the last, as if I were going to my own execution. In a way, I was. "Can I help you?" asked the officer at reception, looking suspiciously at my disheveled appearance. "I'm Jacqueline Ferreira Santos," I said, my voice almost disappearing. "You're looking for me for the disappearance of Dale Santos." Recognition shone in his eyes. In minutes, I was surrounded by police officers, separated from Mariana, who screamed for me, handcuffed like a dangerous criminal. The interrogation lasted hours. I told everything, from John's death, the move to Dale's house, the constant abuse, the fatal night. "Do you have proof of these supposed abuses?" asked the detective, a middle-aged man with tired eyes of someone who had heard every possible story. What proof could I have? Without witnesses? Without marks? Just your word. Against the reputation of a man respected in the community. It was exactly as Dale had said it would be. Nobody would believe. That night, I slept in a cell with 3 other women. I didn't know where Mariana was, if she was scared, if she had eaten, if she was calling for me. The desperation was so great that I vomited the little food they gave me. The next day, more interrogation, more disbelief in my words, more accusations. The pigs on the property were slaughtered, informed a younger officer. We found no human remains. Where is the body? I told the truth. I threw it in the pig pen. Without a body, no crime, commented the detective. But we have the blood in the kitchen, and your flight. That's enough to keep you locked up until trial. Those were the worst days of my life. Worse than Dale's abuse, worse than John's aggressions, because now I didn't even have the comfort of seeing my daughter, of knowing she was okay. A week later, I received my first visit. A social worker, serious woman with thick glasses and clipboard always in hand. Your daughter is in a temporary shelter, she informed. She's doing well, adapting to the routine. When can I see her? That depends on how the case proceeds, and if she wants to see you. What do you mean, if she wants? She's 4 years old. We explained the situation in an age-appropriate way. That mommy did something wrong and needs to be separated for a while. My world collapsed even more. Mariana thinking I had done something wrong, that I had abandoned her. It was too much. A month passed without news. Then 2. Nothing about a lawyer, a hearing, any movement. Just the limbo of the overcrowded cell, inedible food, constant fear. That's when I met Helena, new cellmate. Strong, determined woman who didn't lower her eyes to the guards. She was there for theft, would serve only 3 months. Girl, you're wasting away, she commented on the 3rd day, observing how I barely touched the food. Like this, you won't last until trial. I told Helena my story. I had nothing to lose. To my surprise, she believed. More than that, she was outraged. What they did to you is a crime, woman. There's an organization that helps women like you. When I get out of here, I'm going to look for them. I didn't believe much. Empty promises were common in jail. Everyone said they would help when they got out. But Helena kept her word. 2 weeks after her release, I received a visit from a lawyer. Angelica, black, afro hair, determined look. She represented a women's rights defense group. Your story is more common than you imagine, she said after hearing my complete account. And we're going to fight for you. With Angelica, things started to change. First, she got authorization for me to see Mariana. The meeting was devastating. My daughter, thin, hair cut short, suspicious look as if she didn't recognize me. You left Grandpa hurt, she said when we were alone in the visiting room. No, daughter. Grandpa was doing bad things to Mommy, hurting me a lot. How do you explain sexual abuse to a 4-year-old? How do you justify what I had done? Angelica also managed to get me transferred to the infirmary. I had severe anemia, was dehydrated, with signs of deep depression. It was in the infirmary that I received the worst possible news. Your husband's brothers filed for permanent custody of Mariana, Angelica informed me on a rainy February afternoon in 1976. They claim you're mentally unstable, that you invented the accusations against Dale. They know what happened. They know how he was. Without proof, it's your word against theirs. And they have financial stability, a structured home. In the eyes of justice, they can't take my daughter, but they could. And they did. The judge granted provisional custody to Robert, John's older brother. The same day, he took Mariana back to Kentucky, far from me, without even allowing me to say goodbye. That was my rock bottom. The moment I lost all hope, all will to continue. The night I learned they had taken my daughter, I tried to end my own life. I saved the pills they gave me in the infirmary, gathered several, swallowed them all at once. It didn't work. A nurse noticed, called for help. They pumped my stomach, tied me to the bed so I wouldn't try again. I spent weeks in that state, without speaking, without eating properly, without the will to live. The only thing that kept me breathing was the distant, almost impossible thought of someday seeing Mariana again. That's when I met Sister Conception, elderly nun who visited the prison infirmary bringing spiritual comfort. She had deep wrinkles around kind eyes and calloused hands of someone who worked their whole life. God doesn't abandon his daughters, she said, holding my hands between hers. Even in the darkest valley, he walks beside you. I didn't believe much. What God would allow all that? John's death, the abuse, the separation from Mariana? But Sister Conception didn't give up on me. She came every day, read Bible passages, just talked when I didn't want to hear the scriptures. Gradually, her constant presence was like timid light entering a dark cave. You need to stay strong, she insisted, to fight for your daughter when you get out of here. When, not if. That little word made a difference. I started eating better, responding to treatment, to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a tomorrow beyond those walls. In April 1976, I finally had my first hearing. Angelica had worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, witnesses. Helena appeared to confirm my state when I arrived at the police station. Mrs. Zelda came from far away to testify about my scared arrival in Nashville, with visible marks of violence. The big break was when they found an old employee of Dale's, who confirmed suspicions about John's mother's death years before. It wasn't fever like he said, she told in testimony. It was him who beat her until she couldn't get up anymore. Still, it was a difficult case. Without a body, with my confession under questionable circumstances, with my escape attempt. The trial dragged on for months, back and forth of documents, expert testimonies, depositions. I remained detained the whole time, now in a common cell again, but at least receiving regular medical treatment. In January 1977, almost 3 years after John's death, I received the sentence, guilty of voluntary manslaughter with mitigating circumstances due to the situation. 6 years in prison with possibility of progression to semi-open regime after serving 1/3 of the sentence. It was both victory and defeat. Victory because they recognized the mitigating circumstances, the history of abuse. Defeat because I would still be years away from Mariana. We're going to appeal, Angelica assured. This sentence is still unjust, considering what you went through. I returned to the cell that day with mixed feelings. I was convicted, yes, but at least I had an end date. I had a horizon, however distant it might be. It was that night, lying on the hard bunk, listening to the nighttime sounds of the prison, that I made another fundamental decision. I would use that time. I wouldn't let the years in prison be just waiting. They would be preparation. I asked to enter the prison education program. I started studying the basics since I had left school so early. Soon I was absorbing everything I could: English, math, history. Sometimes I studied 12 hours a day. I had nothing else to do anyway. I also entered the work program. Sewing, crafts, cleaning. I accepted anything that reduced my sentence and allowed me to save some money. Time passed like this, between books and work. I saw Mariana only twice a year, when Robert brought her for mandatory visits by court order. She grew before my eyes in leaps, each time more distant, more strange. At 6 years old, she already called me Aunt Jackie instead of Mom. In 1979, after serving just over 2 years, I got progression to semi-open regime. I could leave during the day to work, returning to sleep in prison. Sister Conception, who had never abandoned me all this time, got me a job at the convent laundry. It was the first breath of true freedom in years. Walking the streets, feeling the sun, seeing the river again. Even having to return to the cell at night, it was like being reborn. In 1981 came conditional freedom. I would leave prison definitively, although I still needed to report regularly to justice. Sister Conception, angel that God placed in my path, offered a room in the back of the convent in exchange for work in the kitchen and laundry. I left prison on a March morning. I was 30 years old, but felt like I had lived a century. My hair already showed white strands, my body marked by hard life, my eyes carrying the weight of everything I lived. But I was alive, and free, and determined to recover what remained of my life, mainly to recover my daughter. Freedom has a smell, you know? That March morning in 1981, when the prison gates closed behind me, I breathed deeply the street air. It smelled like river breeze, bread coming out of the corner bakery oven, possibility. I was thin, with my first gray hairs at 30, and carrying only a plastic bag with the few clothes I had. Sister Conception waited for me outside, her white habit immaculate contrasting with my faded gray dress. Without saying anything, she hugged me. It was the first genuine hug I received in years. "Let's go home," she said. And that word, home, sounded strange to my ears. I had no home. I had almost nothing, except a fierce determination to get my daughter back. The convent of the Sisters of Charity was in a simple neighborhood on the outskirts of Nashville. Old construction with thick walls that kept the interior cool, even in the intense heat of Tennessee summer. My room was small, Spartan, a narrow bed, a wardrobe, a small table with a Bible. After a prison cell, it seemed like a palace. "You can stay as long as you need," explained Sister Conception, "in exchange for help in the kitchen and laundry. When you're ready, we'll help you find another place." I established a routine. I woke at 5 in the morning with the nuns, helped prepare coffee, then went to the huge laundry where I spent most of the day between wash tubs and irons. The work was hard, but comforting in its simplicity. At night, I studied. The nuns had a small library and encouraged me to continue the education I started in prison. My goal was clear. I needed financial and emotional stability to have any chance of getting Mariana back. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Robert and his wife Carmen had raised my daughter for almost 7 years now. She was 11 years old and probably saw me as a stranger. Maybe even as the bad woman who hurt Grandpa, as they told her. A month after my release, I received the first visit from Angelica, my lawyer. Her afro hair seemed even more voluminous, her smile even more determined. "I found a way to get at least regular visits," she explained, spreading documents on the convent kitchen table. "They can't prevent the mother's right, even with your parole. We're going to file a legal petition." It took 3 months of legal battle. Robert hired expensive lawyers, claimed I was dangerous, unstable, that I would traumatize the girl. But the judge, a middle-aged woman with understanding eyes, decided in my favor. I would have the right to bi-weekly visits on Sundays, for now always supervised by a social worker. The first meeting was at a Nashville park. Neutral place, they said. I arrived an hour early, too nervous to stay still. I fixed my best dress, bought at a thrift store with my first savings, put on lipstick, pinned my hair. I wanted to seem normal, stable, trustworthy. When I saw Mariana getting out of the car with Robert, my heart almost stopped. She was so grown up, so different from the little girl I kept in memory. Long hair now, school uniforms instead of the simple dresses I used to sew. A preteen, no longer a small child. "Hi," she said when she approached, voice without emotion, eyes evaluating me as if I were a stranger. "Hi, my love, I missed you so much." I made a motion to hug her, but she backed away. Of course she would back away. To her, I was just a woman who appeared twice a year for tense and uncomfortable visits. The social worker, gentle woman of about 40, suggested we go for ice cream. We sat on a bench, ice cream melting in the heat, talking about superficial subjects. School, friends, the dolls she collected. "Uncle Robert and Aunt Carmen are taking me to Disney World on vacation," she told, a sparkle of excitement in her eyes. I swallowed hard. I could never give her something like that, not even in dreams. When visiting time ended, Mariana hesitated before leaving. For an instant, I thought she was going to hug me. But she just waved and ran back to the car, where Robert and Carmen waited. Well-dressed, successful couple, perfect for raising a child. Different from me, ex-convict working at a convent laundry. I cried the whole way back. But I didn't give up. At the next meeting, I brought a present, a handmade bracelet I made in my spare time. In following visits, I always had some little surprise. Hair ribbons, homemade sweets, small drawings I made. Gradually, timidly, she started opening up. To tell me more about her life, her school friends, the teacher she liked so much. She also started asking about my life, about why I was in that place. She never said prison. I did something wrong, I explained during our 5th meeting, choosing words carefully. But it was to protect myself. Sometimes adults make difficult choices. In December 1981, I got permission for the first meeting without supervision. I took Mariana to the beach by the river, then to an ice cream shop. She was more relaxed, less defensive. She even held my hand while we crossed the street. "Uncle Robert said you killed Grandpa Dale," she spoke suddenly while playing with the sand. "Is it true?" I froze. How to answer that? Lying would be easy, but would establish our relationship on false bases. The raw truth would be too traumatic. Your grandfather was hurting me a lot, I finally replied, doing things that adults shouldn't do to other adults. I defended myself, and he ended up getting hurt very badly. Was he bad? He was sick in the head, daughter. He hurt people he should protect. She stayed silent, absorbing that in her own way, then asked if we could build a sandcastle. The conversation was over, at least for now. While I slowly rebuilt my relationship with Mariana, I also worked to improve my own life. The nuns encouraged me to complete my studies formally. I took night classes after long days in the laundry. In 1983, at 32 years old, I got my high school diploma. "You're too smart to spend your life washing clothes," said Sister Rosa, the youngest at the convent, who taught at public school. "Have you thought about becoming a teacher?" Teaching. Being a teacher. I had never considered that possibility. In my mind, ex-convicts couldn't be teachers. With my criminal record? Your parole ends in 2 years. After that, nothing prevents it. And we desperately need teachers in the poor neighborhoods. The idea planted itself like a seed. I started saving every penny. I moved from the convent in 1984 to a rented room closer to downtown, where I got a better job at an industrial laundry. I earned more, although the work was even more exhausting. When my parole ended in 1986, I had already saved enough to enroll in the nighttime teaching program. I worked during the day, studied at night, saw Mariana on weekends. It was exhausting, but every time I held a book, every time I learned something new, I felt I was finally taking control of my life. Mariana was 16 now, a complete teenager, with her own opinions and typical rebelliousness of her age. Our relationship improved a lot. She already saw me as mom, although she still lived with Robert and Carmen, who had become her family. It was around this time that the whispers, looks, pointing fingers started. That one there, the one who killed her father-in-law. Nashville was a big city, but somehow my story had leaked. Maybe someone who recognized me from the trial time. Maybe someone from the small town who moved to the big city. The fact is that suddenly I found myself marked again. At the teaching program, some classmates stopped talking to me. At the laundry, customers asked for someone else to serve them. Even at the neighborhood market, I felt the looks, heard the whispers. The shame came back with force. The feeling of being less than human, of not deserving a second chance. I thought about giving up, about running again, about hiding somewhere else. It was Mariana, ironically, who gave me the strength to stay and face it. "Mom, you're stronger than that," she said when I told her I was thinking about changing cities. "We've been through much worse. These people don't even really know you." My daughter, so young and already so wise. With her support, I continued. I finished the teaching program in 1988, at 37 years old. It wasn't easy to find a school that would accept hiring me with my background, even having served my sentence completely. But Sister Rosa, always my guardian angel, got me a position at the community school where the convent maintained social work. My first day as a teacher was terrifying. Literacy class, 30 children between 6 and 8 years old, most from very poor families. Many had never held a pencil before, didn't know letters, numbers. Trembling, I introduced myself. "Good morning, children. I'm Teacher Jacqueline." Teacher. The word sounded strange, imposing. Me, who had barely had a chance to study at the right age, was now there to teach. The first week was disastrous. I couldn't control the class, didn't know how to explain so they would understand, came home exhausted and crying. But I didn't give up. I remembered Mariana saying I was strong and kept going forward. With time, I improved. I learned to capture the children's attention with stories, to use their energy instead of trying to contain it, to adapt teaching to each one's pace. At the end of the first year, when several students managed to read their first words alone, I felt a joy I never imagined possible. The teacher's salary wasn't much, but combined with my savings from the laundry, allowed me in 1990 to rent a bigger apartment, living room, bedroom, kitchen, a luxury compared to the cubicles where I had lived. Mariana was 20 years old, studying nursing at university. Scholarship obtained through Robert's influence, who knew important people. She spent more time with me now, sometimes slept at my apartment on weekends. Uncle Robert and Aunt Carmen were good to me, she commented on one of those nights, while we watched television. But I always felt something was missing. What? You, your story, your strength, I cried, hugging her. My daughter had not only returned to my life, she admired me. After everything I went through, after all the mistakes, my daughter saw me as an example of strength. In 1992, I received news that would change everything again. Robert had died. Massive heart attack. Carmen, without biological children, was devastated. Mariana, already an adult, decided to stay with her for a while, to support her in mourning. She took care of me for so many years, Mom. Now it's my turn to take care of her. My daughter's generosity moved me. No resentment, no bitterness about the past, just genuine compassion. It was around this time, with Mariana closer and my teaching career established, that I started feeling a deep need to deal with the ghost that still haunted me. Dale. Not the physical man. He was dead and buried, by my own hands. But what he represented. The trauma, humiliation, guilt I still carried. No matter how much I had rebuilt my life, I still felt dirty inside, marked forever by what he had done to me. And by what I had done to him. I decided to seek help. At the time, therapy wasn't common like today, especially for people of humble origin. But through the school, I got a referral to a support group for women victims of violence. In the first meetings, I couldn't even speak. I just listened to other women telling stories painfully similar to mine. Violent husbands, abusive fathers, harassing bosses. Women who, like me, had been silenced, blamed, discredited. For many, justice will never come through the legal system, said the psychologist who coordinated the group. Our justice needs to be internal, refusing the role of permanent victim. It was a revelation. I still saw myself as a victim, first of John, then of Dale, then of the system. I still believed, deep down, that my value had been destroyed by them, that I would forever be marked, diminished. In 1994, with the group's encouragement, I made the decision to write my story, not to publish, not to show anyone, just to exorcise the demons, to give voice to the woman who was silenced for so long. I bought a thick notebook, hardcover, and started recording everything. Childhood in Kentucky, marriage to John, Dale's abuse, the escape, prison, reconstruction. I wrote at night, after classes, many times crying so much that tears blurred the pen ink. It was a painful but healing process. With each page filled, I felt like I was draining poison from my body, like I could finally choose how that story would be told, not by the version of the men who hurt me, nor by the system that punished me, but by my own voice. When I finished the notebook 6 months later, I did something symbolic. I took it to the riverbank one August dawn. Alone on the grass, under the sky still dark, I read each page aloud, as testimony to the universe. Then I set fire to the notebook and watched the ashes fly over the water. You have no more power over me, I said aloud, thinking of Dale, of John, of all who tried to diminish me. I'm free now. And at that moment, for the first time in decades, I really felt free. The rest of the 1990s was about stability and growth. I continued teaching, now with enough experience to take more advanced classes. Mariana graduated in nursing, got a job at a public hospital. In 1997, she gave me the greatest gift of all, my grandson, Gabriel. I want you to be an important part of his life, she said, placing that newborn bundle in my trembling arms. For him to grow up knowing your story, your strength. I held that child with reverence, marveled at how life comes full circle. Me, who had been separated from my daughter for so long, now got the chance to be a present grandmother from day one. When Gabriel was 2, Mariana married Antonio, the child's father. Dedicated doctor she met at the hospital, gentleman who treated her with respect. Exactly what I always dreamed for my daughter. In 2000, at 49 years old, I managed to realize another dream. Buy my own house, small, in a simple neighborhood, but completely mine. I paid the down payment with years of savings and financed the rest with a government program. The day I received the keys, I walked through each empty room feeling almost indescribable joy. "Grandma, is this house really truly yours?" asked Gabriel, then 3 years old, running through the empty rooms on moving day. Really, truly, my love, nobody can take it away from Grandma. In 2005, at 54 years old, I retired from the municipal education system. I didn't want to stop working completely. The idea of having no purpose scared me. I started giving private literacy classes for adults at home, charging what they could pay, many times just exchange for services or food. It was around this time that I noticed the first significant change in how the community saw me. I was no longer the woman who killed her father-in-law, but teacher Jacqueline, who helps everyone learn to read. People who once crossed the street to avoid passing near me now asked for my help, reading important correspondence, teaching their children, giving advice. The redemption that the legal system didn't give me, the community was offering slowly. In 2010, with Gabriel already a teenager, Mariana had her second daughter, Jacqueline, my namesake. It was an honor I never expected, to have a granddaughter with my name. So she grows up as strong as her grandmother, Mariana explained when she told me her choice. My relationship with my daughter flourished in ways I never imagined possible after our forced separation. We weren't just mother and daughter. We were confidants, friends, supporters of each other. She never blamed me for the separation, never threw my choices in my face. On the contrary, she always showed admiration for how I faced the consequences and rebuilt my life. You taught me that we can always start over, she told me once, no matter how dark the path seems. As I aged, I started feeling a need to share my story beyond the family circle, not for glory or recognition, but so other women would know they weren't alone, that there was a way out even from the deepest abysses. In 2015, at 64 years old, I started participating in conversation circles at community centers, at night schools, at support groups. I told my trajectory without romanticizing, without omitting my mistakes, but also highlighting the strength I discovered in myself. If I managed to survive and rebuild my life after all this, I said to rooms full of women with looks I recognized well, you can too. The reactions were diverse. Crying, hugs, thanks. Sometimes distrust or judgment. But every time a woman came afterward and whispered, I went through this too and thought I was alone, I knew it was worth exposing my scars. In 2018, Gabriel entered law school, wanted to be a prosecutor, specialized in cases of violence against women. Because of your story, Grandma, he explained. I want other women to have the justice you didn't have. The same year, I received a surprising invitation to give a lecture at Vanderbilt Law School about my experience as a woman in the American prison system. Me, who had barely completed high school, speaking to future judges, prosecutors, lawyers. Trembling with nerves but determined, I shared not only my personal story, but also the systematic failures I observed. How women victims of violence were discredited, how the system punished those who defended themselves, how prison destroyed instead of rehabilitating. True justice isn't just in written laws, I concluded, but in the capacity to recognize the full humanity of each person who enters that courtroom. The response was overwhelming. Standing ovation, tears from many students, invitations to speak elsewhere. Suddenly, at 67 years old, I had a new mission. To be a voice for those who had no voice, especially women imprisoned for defending themselves from aggressors. In 2020, when the pandemic forced everyone into isolation, my grandson Gabriel suggested something that would change everything again. Grandma, why don't you tell your story on the internet? There are many people who need to hear this now, especially with so many women trapped at home with aggressors. The idea scared me. Internet? I barely knew how to use a cell phone properly, but Gabriel insisted, bought simple equipment, taught me the basics. Mariana helped organize the themes, structure the stories accessibly, and so Grandparents' Tales was born, recorded in my simple living room, with my granddaughter Jacqueline often beside me playing while I spoke. We started in April 2020, without any expectations. The first video had only 20 views. The second, almost 100. The third, where I told about Dale's abuse, went viral in a way none of us expected. More than 100,000 people watched in 1 week. Messages arrived by the thousands from women across America. Your story saved my life. I watched your video, and today I left home with my children. I thought I was alone until I found your channel. Today, in 2025, I'm 74 years old. My channel has more than 500,000 subscribers. I'm invited to events, interviews, documentaries. Not for being an expert in anything, nor for having impressive titles, just for having survived and having the courage to tell. When I think of the 16-year-old girl who met John at that county fair, the young mother terrified fleeing with a child in her arms, the desperate prisoner who tried to take her own life, it seems like another person. And in a way, it is. From that, Jacqueline remains only the essence, the core that survived everything. Because I discovered, in the hardest way, that we are much stronger than we imagine, that we can lose everything, freedom, family, dignity, and still rebuild, still flourish, still find purpose. When young people ask me if I regret it, my answer always surprises. I don't regret what I did to survive. I only regret not believing in my own worth sooner. That's the real turning of tables I achieved against Dale. I didn't just survive what he did, I prospered despite it. I transformed poison into medicine, pain into purpose. And that, more than any revenge, is the greatest victory I could have had. If you enjoyed my story, please like this video and subscribe to Grandparents' Tales so you don't miss the next stories from this old lady. Tell me in the comments what part of America you're watching from.